You don't lose these moments because you said the wrong thing. You lose them because you reacted at all. Most people think the problem is what to say. It's not. The problem is that you entered a game you didn't notice. Here's what it looks like. You're in a normal conversation, work, social setting, maybe a casual group. Everything feels fine. Then someone says something slightly off. Wow, you're confident today. I guess that works for you. Oh, you went with that option? It's subtle, not direct. But something about it feels pointed. Your body reacts instantly. Tension in your chest, heat in your face, a sudden urge to respond. You start explaining, or defending, or trying to clarify. Maybe you even try to sound relaxed, but your tone shifts. Your energy shifts, and they notice. A few seconds later, the moment is gone. But something feels off. They look calm, maybe even amused. And you're left thinking about it later, replaying it, thinking of what you should have said. Here's the part most people miss. That moment was never about the words. It was about your reaction. The person didn't need information. They weren't looking for clarity. They were watching how you respond under pressure. This is where most people get it wrong. You think you're in a conversation, but you're actually in a test, and the test is simple. Can you stay grounded, or can you be pulled? Every reaction you give answers that question. If you explain too quickly, you signal uncertainty. If you defend yourself, you signal sensitivity. If you get emotional, you signal where your boundaries are weak. And people notice patterns, even if they don't say it out loud. Here's the deeper truth. You don't get drawn in because the comment was strong. You get drawn in because you misread the intent. You assume they are being direct. You assume they want a real discussion. You assume they are open to understanding, so you respond honestly. You try to clarify. You try to be reasonable. But that's not the situation you're in. They're not looking for clarity. They're observing your reaction. And when you respond emotionally, even slightly, you give them exactly what they were looking for, not your words, your response. This is why trying to say the right thing doesn't work, because the more you engage, the more material you give, and once you're engaged, you've already shifted into their frame. Here's the principle. You don't handle provocation by responding better. You handle it by not being pulled into reacting. The real strength is not in your reply, it's in your stability. If they can't shift your state, they can't influence the interaction. And once that becomes clear, they stop trying. This isn't about ignoring people, it's about recognizing intent. Not every comment deserves a response. Some are simply invitations to react, and you are allowed to decline that invitation. So what do you actually do in the moment? You follow a simple structure. First, you pause. The moment you feel that internal reaction, don't speak immediately. Give yourself a second, maybe two. That pause is everything, because it breaks the automatic response. And it shows composure. Most people react instantly. When you don't, you already change the dynamic. Second, you give nothing. When you respond, keep it neutral, short, flat. I see. Okay. No emotion, no explanation, no defense. It sounds like a response, but it carries no information, and that's the point. Third, you redirect. You move the conversation forward, away from the comment. Anyway, did you finish the report? So what's the next step here? You don't stay in their frame. You create your own. And this is where control returns to you. Because now they have nothing to build on, their comment has nowhere to go. And finally, if needed, you step away. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just calmly. I'm going to get back to this. We'll talk later. No explanation, no justification. You remove your presence, and that ends the interaction. This is what most people struggle with. They feel like they need to respond. You don't. You're allowed to leave things unanswered. Now, let's make this more practical. When someone says something slightly provocative, you don't need a perfect reply. You need a stable one. That's one way to look at it. Acknowledges, but doesn't engage. "I'll think about that," closes the loop. No follow-up needed. "Not sure I follow," shifts the pressure back. Most people won't expand, or simply anyway, and move on. These are not clever responses. They're controlled responses. And that's what changes everything, because the goal is not to win the moment. The goal is to prevent the moment from expanding. Here's what happens when you do this consistently. People stop testing you, not because you confronted them, but because there's no response to work with, and people naturally move toward easier interactions, which means they move away from you in that context. And that's a good thing, because you're no longer reacting, you're choosing. This is what emotional control looks like in real situations, not suppressing your feelings, but deciding what deserves expression. So remember this: you don't need to answer every comment. You don't need to correct every tone. Some things are not meant to be continued, and the strongest response is often no real response at all. If you take one thing from this, let it be this: if you don't react, there's nothing to continue. And when there's nothing to continue, the interaction ends on your terms. Next time something feels slightly off, don't rush. Pause. Say one neutral word, then move on. Anyway, watch how quickly the energy shifts. Watch how the moment dissolves, and more importantly, notice how you feel after. Calm, clear, in control of yourself. That's the real outcome you're aiming for. If this made you rethink how you handle these moments, this is only one layer. There's a deeper structure behind how people test boundaries. Most people never see it clearly. If you want to understand it fully, the complete framework is in the book. Because once you see these patterns, you stop getting pulled and start moving with intention.